Record. Okay, there we go. We're on. We're live.
Here we go.
It's taken a while for us to arrive at this moment.
Yeah. It's been some time, been some shifts in our own individual lives, and we've never been able to get into chatting mode and talking about what we're up to. So.
No, I know. 2019 was a roller coaster year.
Yeah. And this year seems to just be like lightning, to one thing after the other. So I'm glad that we could get on and just chat about what's happening in your life, and
and it's the perfect synchronicity of you being in Gogoland in KZN, because of course, you know, we're going to talk about family constellations, and Bert Hellinger was trained by the Sangomas in KZN.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how perfect is that?
Yeah. No, it's awesome. So maybe we should start a little bit, if you want to introduce yourself and say what you do in and amongst the family constellations.
Okay, so I'm Amanda Gifford, and I did a master's in psychology in San Francisco, specializing in drama therapy. And it was a transpersonal institute, so I studied with people like Stan Groff and Rick Tarnas, and as well as the drama therapists. It was very integral. It was an integral transpersonal approach school, and I was there for 4 years in San Francisco. The reason why I wanted to study there was because there was no drama therapy in South Africa at all, and I was really interested in an embodied artistic form of therapy. And there was a whole group of people at the time that were interested in going overseas and bringing that back to South Africa. So there was like a number of people. It slowly went to different institutes and universities in different places. And that mine was 2000 to 2004. So that's kind of my official qualification. So I came back to South Africa having heard about family constellations in San Francisco, but not having done anything, although I was also trained in psychodrama, which is there's a similar, there's influences, you could say, between family constellations and psychodrama. And when I got back to South Africa, there was no drama therapy community yet, because we were the pioneers.
Yeah.
And so I turned to family constellations as a community. And I did my first training, which was 2 years, and then I did another 2-year training, and I'm busy with my third 2-year training through Guy Souza, who's a shamanic constellations facilitator.
Awesome.
So that's, a little bit. And if you've got questions, we can, let it flow.
I immediately want to know more about drama therapy, and why were you so interested in embodiment sort of form of therapy?
So I went to UCT and I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And the University of Cape Town. And I just did random subjects. And the one subject that I took, I was sitting on the first year of the first day of university, and I was sitting in a religious studies course, wondering if that was the right thing for me. And a friend came from the drama class and said, this is the wrong course for you, come to drama. So I got pulled out and into the drama class.
Yeah.
And I had, it was really healing for me, it was kind of one of those things that helped me come out of my shell. I felt like I became more of a communal outgoing person, the mix of all the arts, including, you know, sound and voice and storytelling and mask and many things like that. It was so, there were so many modalities to use. It was incredibly creative. So I just kept being happy in the drama and theatre world and finding my own healing. And eventually I was like, wow, I think that, you know, there could be something here for me. And I didn't know what I was going to do with it. So I did an honors in drama and education. And then I taught for a couple of years in schools, drama and English. And there was so much, you know, just pain and trauma. And I really wanted access to deeper work. So I decided to take it to the next step, so that I wasn't just a teacher, I could actually move into therapy. And so that's when I went overseas to study.
Okay. So what do you mean when you say did you see pain and trauma from other people while they were doing the performance, or how did the pain and trauma come to you?
Just through the children that were at the schools. So, you know, growing up in gangster-ridden townships, and there was a lot of rape and, you know, sexual abuse and pregnancy issues and drugs and all of that. I mean, it was like I was in, you know, some of the townships just outside of Cape Town, and it was just rife with trouble and trauma, you know. And I mean, the drama class could only go so deep. So, you know, I wasn't allowed to do anything more as a teacher. So I just decided, you know, I wanted to be able to go a bit deeper with my work and training.
So were you finding in the classroom that they were able to start expressing this pain and trauma, and that's where you saw it more embodied?
Yeah. So if you let children make a play, it's generally always about, they just come up with whatever their deepest, you know, trauma is. They generally enact it straight away. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Which is not always the best thing. And then, you know, everyone laughs at someone being raped, and, you know, and then it's like you need a little bit of guidance as to what to do with trauma work in South Africa, because it's so huge, the trauma field. So I needed a therapeutic training.
Yeah. Okay. And then, so then when you were able to take it deeper, when you took it into therapeutic terms, then how would you go about that with drama?
Drama therapy.
Yeah.
Just trying to think, you know, I went away from enactments, and although I did use Auguste Boal's methodology quite a lot. So Auguste Boal he died, I think, a couple of years ago. I can't remember when exactly, but he was an activist, and he used embodiment and theatre to help people overcome oppression in townships and in rural areas. And he helped people look, you know, move towards solutions. He said the problem can never be changed in a solution focused therapy. You have to change the person who's dealing with the problem. They have to come up with resources. They have to come up with alternatives. So he came up with a brilliant methodology, which I still use to this day, of using theatre to show the problem, but then get the audience to start to enact solutions. So they would see the problem. Let's say, like, there was a famous one where the community had no water. And every time they saw that there was a place where they could create an intervention, the community who was watching the play, they would say stop, and they would come up. They were called spectators. They would then kind of try and come up with an embodied, enacted solution. And this would create more and more interaction in the community that would kind of loosen up possibilities, you could say. So a big part of overcoming trauma or overcoming oppression is about making resources available and helping people who are feeling oppressed move from that stuck place of normally contraction towards relaxing, starting to open, starting to look around, starting to move, you know, in their mind and with each other towards what they see to be a solution. So that's one of the methods that I used quite a lot.
That's awesome.
Mm.
And I guess also the idea of it being a performance makes it like not real, so then people can get less serious to have the flexibility, like you're saying, to explore different ideas or allow the imagination to flow, and then it becomes some real solutions.
Yeah, there's different ways to use drama therapy. The one way is where it's completely masked, where the situation that's being enacted is like a narrative story that's not you. And that can be used to help people create solutions. And, you know, that's where masks have always been helpful. So masks often help people induce a kind of a trance state where they drop away from maybe the personality that they're, you know, currently looking through or viewing reality through, and then they try and find something else within themselves. A deeper knowing.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. And then, so how did that all flow from drama therapy into family constellations, which is something that you're doing more often now, right? If I'm correct.
Yeah, I do use drama therapy in some ways. I mean, I've had 15 years or so of practice now. So I've had like different spans of techniques that I've kind of relied on more or less, depending on who I've been working with. Like I did a lot of mask work, for example, with prisoners and, you know, children that are coming from vulnerable homes and HIV orphans and stuff like that. So using mask work to imagine possible selves or future selves, or actually get somebody into an outcome, starting to access an outcome. So and I've done, so I've kind of mixed the modalities according to where the inspiration has been flowing at the time. And then more recently, I've kind of focused on the Family Constellations workshops, but I still mix that with my own, maybe a bit of psychodrama or whatever I feel is relevant. So the Family Constellation practitioners are very eclectic. They're very much made up of their own influences.
Okay. So do you want to talk a little bit more about family constellations and how you use drama therapy with that?
I think maybe we can just focus on the constellations a little bit. I'd like to talk about maybe, you know, I mean, some of the history of it and some of the technology, the kind of consciousness technology behind it, which is interesting to me. And and then we can talk about maybe the links between that and training as a Sangoma, but that can also be in a separate interview, but there is still a link.
Yes. Well, let's get into it. Firstly, maybe just explain a little bit, like a brief introduction of what Family Constellations is.
Okay. So Bert Hellinger is the guy that founded Family Constellations in around the 50s, a German man. who went out to South Africa to, as a missionary, basically, and ended up in KwaZulu-Natal with the Sangoma group, and ended up training for 17 years. And he took what he learned back to Europe, and he hybridized it with some of the European psychologies, like some of the existentialist movements and some of the phenomenology influences. And then he made up this name, Family Constellations, that I don't really know much about, the origin. I think that actually he was heavily influenced by Virginia Satir, who did family sculptures to help people look at dynamics in the family. And then I think that's partially where the name might have come from, but I'm not too sure. So anyway, so Family Constellations is this intergenerational ancestral therapy. So helping people work with traumas that might have been passed down generationally through a number of different ways, helping them to become aware of maybe unconscious loyalties or a karma that they might be carrying down through the generations, or a trauma or something that might have happened a couple of generations ago, and that they are somehow still carrying that unconsciously. So you can do work with helping people to begin to look at what it is about their ancestral history that they are carrying, and you can start to make changes so that you're not carrying the sin, as they call it, like in the Bible, the sins of the father 7 generations back kind of thing. It's to start to offload those sins.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, there's many things to say about it. I mean, it goes in many different directions, and there's a lot of applications. So we can talk about those a little bit later.
Yeah, I think that was a really nice history and breakdown of what it actually is all about.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting. I was just saying that it's very interesting that it's a therapy that's looked, it's more of a holistic system, whereas when you're doing therapy for an individual, you may be looking at their own problems or their own traumas, and this is more of a collective with your whole family.
That's right. It's working systemically. So it's the whole system that might be, that you'd be kind of carrying a field in the system that you are incarnated into, a whole lineage. And it's how to keep those fields clean, or how to help clean the lines, the lineage, as best as you can, so that you're not carrying other people's destinies. And Bert Hellinger spoke a lot about orders of love. He said, everybody has to have their own space to do what they need to do for their soul's development. So you have to make sure that everyone is included, that everyone's kind of in their right place. You have to look at things like hierarchy, for example, so that you find sometimes when, say, a father has been absent in a child's upbringing, sometimes the child takes the place of the father, and then instead of getting on with their own life, they kind of carry the role of the father for the mother. And then it stops their flow into the future in terms of finding somebody for themselves, So you'd have to give back the role. You'd have to let go of being the father, because you're not the father, you're the child, for example. and then you free yourself up, you know, to your own destiny. That's an example.
Okay, that's awesome. And so how would someone, like, how does a family constellation work so that you can see those dynamics and start to observe some of the patterns that aren't yours and that you want to use releasing?
So the first thing that I do, the way that I do it, and I know not everyone works like this, is that I see people ahead of time, and I take their story and I take their history and write down, look into their family tree on both sides, you know, the mother and the father line, and see where they're at, where they want to be at. And we start to look at how to get them there. And I look at what might be going on in the family story that will help them get there. So that's the first step, is like an initial session that just assesses the whole story. Then for me, normally the second step is a group session, a group family constellation, where we invite other people from the community, other clients of mine, for example, who might be working on their own story and their own family history. They come and help. It's called representatives. They come as a representative to help the person that's constellating or putting out using people in the group as representatives for story, for members, perhaps members in their family, maybe ancestral lines. You know, we do different things, but it's using people as representatives for the ancestors, and then we can access information based on what those representatives start to pick up.
Okay. And also explain a little bit about the field that's created. So you're talking about you having other people come in, and then they stand in as maybe a father or a mother or someone way back down the line. How does that all work? Explain a little bit about the technology.
Sure. Yeah. So Bert Hellinger called it the knowing field, and you know, many people have different names for it. It's the field of consciousness in which we live, that we are. Rupert Sheldrake is a biologist who coined the term the morphogenetic field. And we've got science speaking about the quantum field these days as well. So including, there's also, you know, psychic research that speaks about the use of the subconscious mind to access information. So basically what's happening is that we are tapping into this field of consciousness that carries information, and it also carries a memory. So everything has a memory field around it, and you can tap into that memory field and start to recode it in a way. So for example, if somebody had trauma in their past, I mean, there's been a lot of, for example, women who have generations of sexual abuse, for example. So what you can do so that memory stays coded kind of in the field, passed down, like trauma is passed down unconsciously, generationally. And what, you know, has happened to the grandmother, somehow, if it's unresolved or unworked with, something gets enacted to the mother, even if it's like not realizing why her mother's unavailable, for example. Or so there's a whole sort of fragmented field that comes through unresolved trauma. So you can choose representatives to represent the mother, the grandmother, the great-grandmother, for example. And you can actually, each representative would kind of tap into that field, that coded field of information that carries memory. And that memory can then be worked with in order to reorganize it, to heal it, to release it, to get it more into a flow of love. Maybe it needs to be honored. Maybe that person was never, maybe they could never tell the truth, you know. So it's about letting the truth come out. And, you know, some people say it's actually the soul, the actual ancestor is there, they get invited. And I do have that experience, that the actual ancestor who was the grandmother or the great-grandmother does arrive, and kind of, in a way, the representative is almost like a channel for that ancestor's voice. And then the ancestor's getting that healing through that representative. And whatever it is that we're doing, you know, what can we do for you? What do you need? What do you need to say, for example? You know, what did you not ever say? And then that can affect the entire generation. You can do a whole lot of healing like that. And that's, you know, I'd say where the similarity is between constellations and the Sangoma training. And I can ask you more about that, because you, of course, are a Sangoma. But there's another way to look at it as well, and that is, if people don't necessarily, you know, if they're not necessarily comfortable with the idea of the soul or the actual ancestor arriving, then, you know, you can look at it in terms of your field of consciousness that you've inherited, almost like a signal that's been internalized in your genetic upbringing, in your conditioning, and that can be reworked. Yeah. So I often use this metaphor for people, and it helps them a lot. This idea that, you know, we're always looking through a window of our own perception in our mind. We're always looking out through our own beliefs. And it's sometimes, you know, almost like a stained glass window in a church or a temple. The sun is shining through that particular image, and then it's reflecting onto the floor. And we actually have that stained glass window in our minds. That's our internalized picture of the world. And we looking through it all the time to the reflection on the floor. And we think that, you know, if we're unhappy with something there, that in the reflection that we're looking at, we think, you know, oh, we can change it out there, you know, and we try. But of course you can't. So part of the therapy is to create projective techniques to help people look at their window that they've internalized of perceptions and beliefs and conditionings. Put it out, say, okay, this is my window, this is what my internal world is looking like at the moment. Do some work to create new information coming through, new ideas about what could actually be going on that might be more holistic, more of a healed perspective, you could say. And then, so change their picture, change their window, and then you re-internalize it, and then the reflection will be different. It's a good, easy, you know, easy image.
Yeah. And I just wanted to go back to sort of like the recoding. You were talking about when there's some trauma, or there's something being passed down, or even our own, and it starts to code within our DNA cells, coding within the morphogenetic field. What is happening? Like, how are we able to recode that, and then what does it do to the field so that it actually heals us? So what's the method of healing behind all of that?
Well, I'm not a trauma expert, but I can just tell you what I know to do based on what I've been trained to do. So with trauma work, you need to move away from the trauma and focus on resources. Because often a person can get stuck in this kind of trauma vortex. Like all they can think about is the trauma, like a deer stuck in the headlights kind of thing. And that just reinforces this spiral, this trauma spiral that they get caught in, you know. And so really what you want to do is you want to help a person to step back from that and say, well, what are your resources? Let's develop resources for you, for example. And then we start to brainstorm what resources there could be. So I've learned over time that it's not really great to have a representative for the trauma, but some people do. You know, like some practitioners do have a representative for the trauma. So choose somebody that's sitting here in the group that could represent the person that raped you, for example. And then, you know, the ultimate goal would be to completely accept this destiny.
Yeah.
Completely accept it, honor it, and let it go. Because it's happened to you. There must be a reason why it happened to you. And to try and heal it completely through honoring and accepting that this was your destiny for whatever reason this came into your life. And sometimes there's other work to be done, but I don't really do as much of that. I mean, I don't think I've come to that place of feeling quite comfortable. I mean, I'm getting there. I'm still learning about working with trauma. But a lot of the time, so you might choose a representative or even a cushion in the room to represent the trauma so that somebody doesn't have to tap into it. And then you ask a person, okay, well, you know, let's look at how to get you from that trauma towards resources and what work needs to happen. And you could choose representatives in the room to be resources. Sometimes then you see what information starts to come through. And in a way, you know, you're reorganizing that person's field because their perception is shifting. So they're starting to incorporate this idea of resources inside of themselves. So it becomes like a buffer so that they can move out of this frozen trauma state towards a little bit of flow and movement. That's what you're encouraging. You want someone to move out of that stuck, frozen stare in that vortex to, oh, there's something else, there's another world, there's movement, and move away towards a resource, towards a future, towards some healing.
That's awesome. Yeah. And that's very practical because it starts to give the person ideas of what are the next step forward to move yourself, get that momentum to get to that place of where you want to be, which is a healed state. So, okay.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that ultimately, if something like that trauma has happened, there's healing to be done to release the energy of the trauma in your body. And in the end, I think a person has to just move towards complete acceptance. Otherwise, it's always like an irritation inside of you that just never can heal. I'm not an expert. I'm just sharing a little bit of what I've learned.
It makes sense though. It's I can relate to that. So
Okay.
And there was also one other thing that may be concerning to some people that may want to try family constellations is that this idea of being a representative. Maybe they're thinking, oh, but I'm I'm just a normal person. I don't know what it means to have a soul come into me or be a channel or whatever whatever the case may be. So how, like, do you need some sort of training to be able to be a representative? Is there any like, I'm trying to say, like, are there any ways that you could get misinformation because of the representative, of not being able to channel properly or whatever the case may be?
So everybody is actually able to do it, and the less experience and training they have, the better normally, because they just surprise themselves when the information is just there, it's just available, and they're like, how did that happen, you know? So it's almost like we've forgotten our technology, our own technology of consciousness that is, you know, not local. It's not just like, here we are and just this is us and that's the end of it. And, you know, we have forgotten that we are connected non-locally in this quantum universe, you know, where we can access information at a distance, and we can access anything actually that we focus on and become present with. And it's not so much a soul coming into you, I would say, as more of, you know, your consciousness and the consciousness that you're focused on serving at the time becoming kind of entangled, or they share information. It's like, maybe, I don't know how to think of a good metaphor, but like Bluetooth. You know, like two phones that are put next to each other, and they can share information. It's a little bit like that. I wouldn't say a soul's coming into you at all. It's just you kind of become a vehicle to receive information downloads, much in the same way as we see with our phones and computers. And we do it all the time. We receive information from outside of ourselves, so-called outside, right? So-called outside. When people get an intuition about somebody that's going to call, and then it is them, or they have a funny feeling about something and then they follow that up, and, you know, it's guidance for them, those kinds of things. So, but you do need to learn to keep your energies clear. You need to set strong intentions. You do need to manage the field properly, nice, clear boundaries. I like to create a protected space. And also people need to learn to detoxify themselves, you know, after working with other people's information. You need to make sure that you're clear of that. And some of the ways that the remote viewers suggest detoxification is like, you need to change your state somehow. You need to take a swim, walk on the earth. You know, a lot of the time with at the end of a constellation, we do this cupping on the body, you know, like that kind of thing, like quite hard to sort of just shake out the field that you were busy with, that you were present with. So those kinds of things are very important. I like to de-roll people so that there's an ending to that transfer of information. And yeah, I'm just trying to think of other safety tools. You know, a lot of the time there's a synchronicity between the role that the person takes on and their own story. So what you find is that the healing of the role that they're playing, or the representative that they're being, they actually receive something from that. So I like to leave people in a state where the energy field is upgraded. It's better. It's much better for everybody concerned than when you started.
Mm. Mm.
Mm.
Okay, cool. So it's not just the person that is coming for the constellation that gets the healing, but the whole group
Yeah,
that
the
stands in with
collective.
it.
The collective.
Mm.
Who's that? Some Gogo. Who is that?
Gogo Nomzamani.
Oh,
The one
wonderful. I get to meet her on video.
Yes.
Hi, you, Coco.
Hello,
is
Gogo
Amanda.
Nomzamani. I have heard so much about you.
Maria's friend.
Oh, yes, my dear. Where are you from?
I'm from Johannesburg. And I tell you, one day I will be there because I'm ready. I'm so ready to come and visit.
Hallelujah.
So Amanda, we were busy talking about family constellations. And Amanda works with Guy, who you train.
Guy, oh, Sebastian.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's right. Guy is a child of yours.
Yes.
In the lineage. That's
Yes.
right.
Yes.
So
Amanda.
It's
Nice to
all
see
connected.
you. I'm so happy, Coco.
I'm so happy. It's so beautiful to see you and meet you like this the first time on the flat earth screen.
Yes, my dear. It's true. Oh, Coco, I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm just walking. I never see
Yeah.
see everything.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to check my garden, Angela. You can continue.
Okay. Lovely to meet you. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's all connected in that way.
Mm. Yeah, so I've got a couple of things that I wrote down that I want to just share with you. I don't know if you want me to go through that. So the one thing that I wanted to just touch on a little bit more of was the technology of consciousness behind the work, because I think it's interesting for people to know about the science that has come through sort of in the last, really it's broken through in the last 50 years, you could say, into the consciousness of science, which is the quantum science world. And it has made a big impact in terms of connecting what, you know, maybe traditional healers and psychics and all of these people, remote viewers, etc., they've been doing forever, all of the ancient wisdom. This is a kind of science that now backs it up. So when people say, oh, I don't know how this is happening, well, actually we do know now how it's happening. And there is a science behind these things. And so I'll just share with you a little bit about what I know about that. So what I understand is that quantum physics has really made this breakthrough in helping us understand that things are not fixed, that the world is not solid, it's not subject or objective, you know, it's not just atomic, it's subatomic. So when they discovered quantum physics, they actually looked into the atom, subatomic, below and inside, to the parts that were making up the atom. And that world, that subatomic world, and how it behaved became the study of quantum physics. And what they found was that the quantum world, or the subatomic world, the world of the tiny and the world of the invisible, had 4 qualities to it. And that is the observer effect, non-locality, the dual nature of light, and entanglement. Those are the 4 properties. So the observer effect is that the scientist would look at the experiment, this subatomic quantum experiment, and it would be influenced. Where the scientist looked, so the outcome would move in the direction of the observer. And that became, you know, it was massive because there was a participatory subatomic world. It was participating with the consciousness of the person that was looking at it and observing it. They were, in a way, inextricably, bound together. Yeah. And so why is that important for us? Is that what we think, what we assume, what we look at, how we look at things, what we perceive as reality, forms like that for us. And so we have to be very discerning in terms of how it is that we are moving our reality around us through the way that we are looking and what we are looking for and how we're managing our perceptions, because it will be creating an effect in the field. Mm-hmm. And like, for example, along with the whole quantum physics, what could you say, like renaissance, was the discovery of epigenetics. So epigenetics through Bruce Lipton. He saw that the genes are not fixed. So this was the similar kind, in the same genre, that the genes are also affected by perception. And the signal from the environment affects the genes. And our perception of the environment creates that signal. And so our blueprint is not fixed. Just because your mother died of diabetes doesn't mean you have to. Doesn't mean there's no longer this thing of, you're fixed in this genetic line. So you have to shift your propensities, the way that you're perceiving things, what you're taking on. You now, have to look at what is the message behind the disease. How can you shift that? And then the DNA actually will reorganize itself, and the signal that matches your perception will be turned on or expressed. So we can completely reorganize our blueprint. So that's very important. So that's the observer effect. Non-locality is really about what I do here in this room affects. I can pick up information at a distance. What I do here affects everything. So it's that we have this non-local universe. We don't have to actually physically be somewhere in order to access the information of that thing. So that also, works very well with the constellations work, because you can access information just by being a representative of that thing and focusing on whatever it is that you're wanting to gain information about, and that will start to become available to you in consciousness. And then the dual nature of light is about particles of reality are not fixed. They're both a wave and a particle. And that what we see as a fixed reality has another, that's just one aspect of it. It has another aspect. It's also light. So light is both a wave and a particle. And so, in other words, reality is just not fixed. We think it is, but it's just expressing itself based on our will. Our will. So so reality has a dual nature. And entanglement, what they found is that particles that they brought together in an experiment affected and imprinted each other with their information. And then when they separated and they put these particles in two separate places kind of in the universe, they would still be affected by each other. So there's not really distance as we know it, Yeah. So the way that, I would think about that in a constellation, for example, is you want to re-entangle somebody into the reality that they want, the outcome that they want, so that you continually imprint yourself or entangle yourself into a reality that's rich with the information that you want to have with you. And then you will forever be able to access that information wherever you are. So those are some interesting sort of words to play around with. And, you know, people, I think, still don't always know about how it is that our consciousness can be linked on all those levels and all those fields. And I suppose, you know, with my training at the Ramtha School, I got that model quite clearly. So that was helpful. That was really where my big training came from.
Also doing family constellations is a nice way to get yourself involved in that world and sort of put yourself in a place of understanding. Because now it's words, but then when you get into family constellation, it becomes embodied, like we spoke about right at the beginning.
That's right. It is like a bit of a mystery until you've done it. And then you kind of have a bit of more of a sense of what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So Gabriel, I don't know where you want to go, but there was a couple of other things that I wanted to talk about. So just in terms of a couple of examples of constellations, and like what different kinds of services in a way that it provides.
Yeah, let's go with that. I'm going to mute so that I move, but you can continue talking because I just need to get the charger.
Okay, sure.
So you can start with some examples.
Yeah. I can talk to the tree and the ancestors in Gogoland while you're gone.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay. Cool. How long are you going to be gone for?
No, I'm just turning so I can get to the plug.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. Different view.
Yeah, nice. So I thought I'd just touch on some of the different kinds of work. Starting with maybe the most recent one that you were at. I haven't really done another one since then.
Oh, yeah.
So what I found is that there's a need to work to update my work and kind of follow some of the trends that are coming in. And what I found is that people are not necessarily working directly with ancestors so much anymore, because a lot of people have done a lot of healing and cleaning work on their ancestral fields. And now they're kind of ready for another level of work. They want to kind of do a jump from healing the past to bringing in something of maybe a higher dimension. So I decided I wanted to do a consciousness, a golden frequency attunement constellation, and see how we could do that through constellations. And I just think it's nice to mention because it's much more out of the box, and my work is really out of the box. You know, I can do the traditional constellations work, but I really like to use it in an applied way because there is just so much that you can do with the constellations. So we did the golden frequency attunement work where we invited in the field of this golden realm, you could say, and then choose representatives that kind of represented that golden frequency and see and saw, or we listen to what comes out. And maybe if you're interested, you could even speak a little bit about your experience of that. But I just feel that the golden frequency is really an important one for our work at the moment, and South Africa, and, you know, galactic history. There's a lot in that. So I don't know, maybe you need an opportunity to speak for a while. Do you want to say anything about your experience, or?
Yeah, I can say a little bit. I'm always a bit nervous when I do family constellations, because it's like I know, okay, something is going to come, and then I'm going to be clear and allow the information to come through, and I do all these things. But when the field is set and everything is right, it just starts to flow, and that's what I experienced, particularly with this family constellations that we did with the golden frequencies. It really was a powerful experience where the words and the information was just flowing, and the embodiment of the different beings that were coming through, bringing in the information through me and through all the others that were participating. It was really
Yeah, I mean, I remember it is like participating in a mystery. I think just because we are still remembering how to use our consciousness to shift, to phase change, or to shift frequency dimensions. But I remember at one point you were there was like a lineage of like a pharaoh's line that was kind of making itself available through you. And all I could see above you was like lineage of pharaohs. I could actually see them, like their faces, and they're forming all in gold, like a lineage like that. It was quite extraordinary.
Yeah. So while you were seeing that, I was feeling that, or my body was sort of in positions of that feeling state, and and the voice changed a little bit, and it's quite intense. And how the energy of your body starts to flow. I was getting hot, because of how much energy was running through. My hands were sweating and things, because of how much intensity it was.
How strong it is. Yeah, I guess, I also trust that when I put out a constellation and there's an intention for it, that the right people that match the frequency of the work show up. So I don't worry so much anymore about that. I kind of trust the synchronicity. And, I know, that you are like an incredible person to do that level of work. So to have people that are capable of reaching into a very high frequency state, nobody else arrived except you and the two others that could also do that level of, holding that state. So there is that as well.
Yeah.
So that was the golden frequency attunement work. And then I did a whole series of work around helping someone fall pregnant, attune to the child when they were in the womb, because she was very afraid of giving birth. And so we chose a representative in the room to represent the soul of the child. And then she could have a conversation through this person who was kind of accessing the information of the soul of the child about how to go about bringing this child through in a conscious way. So it became a collaborative birth experience. And I've done, once the baby was born, beautiful child, so happy. We did a baptism for him through constellations as well. So inviting all his ancestors, his soul's highest destiny, his information around that to kind of create a great gateway for him for this life. So that was a beautiful piece of work, very rewarding.
And good.
Yeah, beautiful. So another piece of work that I did was conscious death. So that was a conscious birth. A conscious death was somebody who I'll just won't, say who, but their father was in an old age home, really very, well, I can probably say it, it's my partner, my romantic partner's father, who was really, really in his 90s. He was hanging on. He was in an old age home. He was so miserable. He was like in like a bit of a zombie state. And we just wanted to find out if there's anything we could do to help him. You know, is there anything he's hanging on to? Is there anything he needs? So we did a constellation for him, and we found out that there was some unfinished business that needed to be dealt with. We fed that information back into the family system, and they attended to that information. And I think 2 weeks later, he died in the most peaceful, beautiful, I mean, with his favorite music on the full moon, on the solstice, passing. So it was, you know, these are such elegant ways to help people live and die. Really great work, you know. And I think sometimes I think, wow, we should be doing a lot more work like that with old people, you know, who sit in these old age homes, and they nothing's moving. They're just sort of stuck like in a like, what do you call it, like a nowhere zone, sort of.
You
know? Like, waiting for something.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So those are two pieces of work that I can think of. And then the contact work, so the golden frequency attunement is a little bit similar to the contact work that I've done. So taking family constellations into star family. So more not just Earth-based family, but galactic ancestors, ancient origin family. And you can do the same thing where you would choose someone as a representative for, you know, where you came from before you were here on this earth, or what star family lineage you might have. And that is a way to use constellations to make your own initiated contact with beings, human beings that live in other galaxies. So that I've done as well, and I really like that, because I do think we're moving into a more galactic age, back to being more aware that there are beings in other galaxies and star systems. So so those are some of the things. I don't know if there's anything else that comes to mind for the moment. I mean, yeah, it's very eclectic, the work that I do. You know, sometimes I pull on astrology to help look at people's maybe where their wounding sits in their charts, where their north node is, which is kind of like the direction that they should be focusing on in their life. You know, those kinds of things.
So generally anyone can come for a family constellation, and for various different things as well. Maybe they've done their own healing journey, that there's still things that they can gain from family constellations, like the golden frequencies, or a more conscious way of living.
You can do absolutely anything. You're inquiring into a field of all knowing. So what do you want to know? You know, do you want to know how to get rich? Choose someone to be wealth. See what information they have available to you. Start to entangle yourself with wealth, with the idea of wealth. You know, become present with what it is that you're wanting to know about, and move in that direction, and organize or imprint or code your particular field or system in the direction that is for your highest joy or your highest frequency. So people can work with money, relationships, health issues. The health constellations are also incredible. You know, sometimes you can choose a representative to represent the illness that you're dealing with. You actually let the illness speak, and you can sometimes match a family member that might not have been heard, or for some reason, you know, the illness is connected to someone in the family whose destiny you might be carrying on some level or other. And you can do massive healing and letting go of things. Yeah, it's pretty magical.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
I don't think I have any more questions from my side either.
Yeah, I think that's probably a lot, eh? It's probably more than enough. Yeah, I had one more story that I wrote down here that I'll share quickly before we end, which is also about uncovering, like, when somebody can't make sense of things in their life. Like I had a client whose family really hated her. They all hated her. She couldn't make sense of it because she's like a nice person, you know. And I was hearing her story, and then I was like, just starting to tune into her greater field, because often if there's this question of something doesn't make sense, then for me, in my model, I look to other times, other lives, you know, something that's outside of the box in terms of what they're seeing. And you often find that karma can be carried forward in terms of into family. And I just saw her as the persecutor in another life. It was so clear to me, and I fed that information back to her.
So you can carry on?
No problem. Now, I was just saying, I saw her so clearly as the persecutor in another life of the family members. And that her destiny had been to come back and feel their rage for many years until it was done. And I shared that with her, and I said to her, look, this might not make sense. It might just be symbolic.
Yeah.
I'm just going to share it with you because that's what I'm picking up. And she just said she found she arrived at total peace after that insight. And she says she hasn't felt as happy as this in a long time. So, you know, you can help people, like, just rest, like, you know, find solutions that might be completely normally not, you know, not found.
Fantastic.
Oh, it's a lot of information.
It's such a broad topic, and you know, there's so much within family constellations, and I think you did a really good job to break it down and give some practical information about what it's all about. So thank you.
Yeah, and I'd really love to do a follow-up interview of you. And because I do think that, you know, there's a lot of maybe that just interesting information to share, and possibly synchronicities in the field that it would just be nice to have that conversation of your journey as a Sangoma.
Yeah, I've come to a place of better understanding, so it is going to be nice, as I already see some synchronicities that we'll get into. So
that would be wonderful. What are you doing there in Gogoland? Do you want to share that with the collective?
At the moment, life just brought me or you could say ancestors brought me here, and they've got a bigger plan. And so I'm at the next stage of learning, understanding the deeper meanings of Sangoma, and what it means to be a Sangoma, why are we doing what we are doing, and also gather the parts, gather all the information, because one day, you know, our Gogo is not going to be there who holds all the information and tradition, and we as part of the family need to start to gather the information. Why do we do this? Why do we do that? And get a better understanding so that we can keep this tradition alive. So.
Yeah, wonderful.
So we go, we're learning, we keep on learning until
Absolutely. We got massive downloads to incorporate, and uploads and whatever.
Yeah.
All right, Gabriel, well, it's so nice to be with you.
Yeah, it was nice to connect again. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this time. And we'll chat again for your interview, whenever that is.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Lots of love.
Love.
Lots
Enjoy
of
your
love.
day.
Bye.
Bye.